Hey everyone. There's some people saying that feminism isn't a lost cause. To them, I say, prove it. Hi, I'm Diana Davison. I've been talking about Stephen Galloway, and just for some background, in June of 2015, former Creative Writing Department Chair at UBC, University of British Columbia, Stephen Galloway, was fired without severance for allegations of sexual misconduct. This happened after a third-party investigation by retired Judge Mary Ellen Boyd cleared him of all serious allegations. Not just cleared him, but cleared him on the civil court standard of a balance of probabilities. So how did this happen? People want to know. Mr. Galloway was accused of sexual assault by one individual. This person is referred to as MC, or main complainant. There were 8 other complainants in support of MC, and you're going to laugh your ass off when you hear what those were. Going into this list, keep in mind that anyone asking for accountability from the university over how they mishandled this situation is being called a rape apologist, being told they're silencing female victims of rape. No one on this list says they were raped. There was only one person who claimed sexual assault, the main complainant, and that claim was dismissed on the lowest burden of proof that an investigation can have: balance of probabilities. I want to make one more point here before we get started. The main complainant engaged at least 2 other students and some faculty members when she decided to file a complaint, and both of those students, Chelsea Rooney and Sierra Sky Gemma, who knew the full details of the allegations, have spoken at great length with the media about the case. These individuals have expressed outrage that any friends of Stephen Galloway's have chosen to speak to the media about their knowledge of the case. So point number 1 in this video: so-called Galloway victims are hypocrites. Rooney and Gemma do not have license to go around spreading one side of the story in the media and then attempt to bar others who have a different set of facts, bar them from correcting the record. I don't know Stephen Galloway. I've never communicated with him. The contents of my videos are based on information provided mostly from the complainants themselves in the course of their advocacy for the complainant. Details about the covert, underhanded tactics used in their witch hunt have been made available by the complainant's side of the story, and my harsh view of them is based on what they themselves have revealed about their own characters, while pretending to be bound by confidentiality. So leaving aside the main complainant herself, let's look at what Chelsea Rooney was able to drum up against Stephen Galloway. She was looking to get multiple allegations to bolster the case. She went around handing out invitation letters to other students, encouraging them to make a complaint. And this is what her immense efforts resulted in, the list I'm about to give to you. These are the so-called rape victims that we are supposedly silencing. Ancillary complainant 1. Allegation that Stephen made a joke about breasts. AC1 notes, female student did not seem uncomfortable. Decided to step forward after he heard about main allegations. He makes no suggestion that at the time the respondent's actions caused any hostile or intimidating environment for learning. So let's call this complainant Mr. Joke Police. This upstanding citizen, just trying to do his civic duty, reported that a joke made by Stephen Galloway didn't seem to offend anyone. That's right, nothing happened. That's his testimony. The receiver of the joke didn't complain. Nobody felt weird at the time of the joke or after the joke, but the humor police wants the record to reflect that sometimes Mr. Galloway would make jokes in class. This subject, that Stephen Galloway would sometimes joke around, will come up again. Are we harming Mr. Joke Police by asking for another investigation? He's probably feeling a little stupid right now, but I suspect he didn't actually think his statement would be turned into a full-on complaint in the first place. Because it's not a fucking complaint. He said no one was offended. Moving on. Complainant number 2. She says that Stephen never misbehaved towards her, but displayed general flirting behavior. She makes no suggestion the behavior created a hostile or intimidating environment for learning. Let's call this one Little Miss What Up. This curious woman seems to be testifying in Stephen Galloway's favor. I have no idea how this got listed as a complaint either. She's actually saying that as far as she knows, nothing happened. She was there, she witnessed. Nothing. Vini, vidi, nada. Get it so far? We've got the joke police and Miss I Never Saw Nothin'. Are we silencing any rape victims yet by asking for an investigation here? The first 2 out of 2 ancillary complaints are actually witnesses that Stephen didn't do anything. Who turned them into complainants? I want to know. These are not complainants. Their inclusion was just to make it appear that Stephen is a menace by inflating the complaint count. There is mischief afoot. Number 3. She describes playing a drinking game and that one night their legs touched under the table. She says that nothing untoward occurred and she returned home. However, the next day she was embarrassed, particularly that she had flirted with a professor. She says that they continued to work together without incident. In conclusion, while she found he could be a bit mean towards her, she admits he was well behaved in class and that he was professional towards her, and that she learned a lot. Nevertheless, she wishes he'd been a warmer, more sensitive, empathetic professor. We'll call her Miss Inner Conflict. This one is a bit more complex and therefore a bit more fun. This woman says she flirted with Stephen, not the reverse, and then she was embarrassed, but he seems to have acted like it never happened and they went back to normal. Well done, Stephen Galloway. Her only complaint in the end was that Stephen didn't give her enough attention. She wanted him to be warmer, more sensitive, and empathetic. But if he'd done that, then this would have been seen as responding to her flirting, and then would have become an actual complaint, one that would be more threatening. Galloway, being standoffish after she flirted with him, turns this into yet another complaint that Chicky Poo didn't see him do nothing. That's 0 for 3 right now. No rape victims silenced yet. So what rape are we apologizing for? The worst that's happened yet is a student flirted with Galloway and he turned down the opportunity to take advantage of her. Complainant number 4. She notes she has obtained several positions in the department that were not in any way dependent on the respondent. She says she'd recently expected the position of undergraduate secretary to be posted this year, a position she believes she was well qualified for and ought to have obtained. Ultimately, the job was never posted, and a month later, one of the respondent's favorites obtained the job. She surmises that the job was not posted since faculty realized she was obviously qualified. Well, there's a lot of assumptions in there, but let's look at this. First of all, it's easy to know who this complainant is because she's one of the people giving multiple interviews to the newspapers, then whining about confidentiality being violated. For now, let's call her Ms. Hire Me or I'll fuck your shit up. Let's unpack this one a bit. The only legitimate complaint Sierra Sky Gemma could make in terms of unfair hiring practices would have been if Stephen hired the main complainant for the job. The main complainant, the person she's supposed to be defending, is the only person Stephen actually had any sexual interactions with, a consensual sexual relationship between 2 adults in their 40s. And the reason this is against policy is because Stephen was in a position to hire and UBC doesn't want him to give a job to someone he's sleeping with. So, fuck your shit up girl is somehow supporting the main complainant, but also complaining about how the main complainant was possibly getting special favors. Isn't she actually complaining about the main complainant? Galloway didn't have sex with anyone else, so Gemma should take a moment to reflect on why she actually didn't get the job. Maybe it's because she's a whiny little fuck who wears ridiculously gigantic flowers in her hair and no one takes her seriously. Please note, this is 4 complainants now, and no one's been assaulted or sexually harassed yet, except for Stephen. He was sexually harassed by complainant 3. The next complainant is the most vocal in the news and was the one trying to solicit more accusations, like the ones you're reading right now. So if you're getting pissed off with this list of non-complaints, then blame Chelsea Rooney, who for the purposes of this video, I'm going to call Miss Vigilante. Mary Ellen Boyd doesn't seem all that impressed with her either. She complains that the respondent said of a story she'd submitted in class about a girl with a crush on, we'll get to that later, that it was gross. She considers this an insensitive remark, that while she was in the north caring for her mother and going through a difficult time, the respondent, upon hearing from her that she was having trouble sleeping, remarked that maybe complainant 5 was going north crazy, a term the respondent had used to describe the phenomenon of coping with extended daylight. AC5 felt this was insensitive. She complains that while she was on leave, she wrote to the respondent, who replied, "Yes, I assume you're having some kind of mental breakdown," which she considered insensitive, but which Mary Ellen Boyd finds was signaling to her that he was prepared to assume she was suffering some stress or other mental health issues, thus not triggering any ongoing tuition obligation. And finally, she complains of a comment Stephen made on her Facebook page, teasing the complainant and her partner, who was dressed in a costume, which we'll get to shortly. Complainant 5 found Stephen's comment sexually inappropriate and embarrassing. Mary Ellen Boyd concludes that complainant 5 refused to either confirm or edit her supplementary statement of evidence, and instead returned a memorandum in which she disavowed her earlier recollections. The investigator notes that complainant 5 is the one complainant who has most vigorously participated in this investigation, conferring with the main complainant, speaking to the creative writing program faculty prior to the November 15th meeting, and then spearheading the gathering of evidence from the ancillary complainants. So I'm going to fill in some of those blanks for you. Let's look at what Rooney herself told the Globe and Mail. Ms. Rooney had told the investigator about a Facebook comment Mr. Galloway made after she, by now a graduate, posted a photo of her partner, an instructor in the program, dressed as a character from the comic series The Adventures of Tintin. On Facebook, Mr. Galloway referred to bedroom roleplay, and later in the thread, which includes responses from Ms. Rooney, wrote, "This whole photo is what would happen if Wes Anderson made an adult film." Ms. Rooney told the investigator she found the comments very inappropriate and embarrassing, particularly coming from her partner's boss, and in a public venue. In response to this complaint, Ms. Boyd wrote, "While Mr. Galloway's posting may be inappropriate, I am unable in this context to characterize Ms. Rooney's allegations of harassment as anything other than a gross overreaction." Not only does Chelsea give us more detail, she's still whining about Galloway playing favorites in hiring, while Rooney's own boyfriend is one of his employees. So if her boyfriend was a favorite, but being grievously insulted by him on Facebook, did Galloway's so-called favorites get the benefit of being more harassed than others? I don't know how this is supposed to work, and still leave me angry with Stephen Galloway. I'm calling this Joke Police episode number 2. There isn't a single thing in Ms. Rooney's complaint other than Stephen said something and she didn't like his sense of humor. Her boyfriend was working for him. She was apparently one of his in-group. And when he told her that her story was gross from the very beginning of this complaint, well, Chelsea agrees it's gross. She was working on a story of a girl in love with a pedophile. That her story is gross is actually a point of pride for her, and I'm going to get to why she's happy to have written a book that even her good friend, Sierra Sky Gemma, won't read in the next video. But here we are, 5 complainants, and none of them were sexually assaulted. None of them even have a reasonable complaint. In fact, 3 of them are telling us that Stephen did nothing wrong as far as they ever saw. If you're getting pissed off at this list, well, blame Chelsea Rooney and whatever faculty turned these people into complainants and fired him after a judge threw all the complaints out. On to idiot number 6. She complains of 3 insensitive remarks, including visualization techniques used in creative writing workshop, joking, "Don't worry, I'm not going to assault you," when the door to his office was closed, and his question related to another complainant's story about human trafficking, "Why do you know so many human traffickers?" which she felt implied there was something wrong with her, and she says she considered this a stigmatizing statement to make to her. So, I'm calling this complainant Hall Monitor Chick. This appears to be one of Stephen's teaching assistants, Erin Flegg, who's also spoken to the media. Now, I may be wrong, and Ms. Flegg can correct me if I've made an error. This is Joke Police event number 3. Stephen said, "Don't worry, I won't assault you," and guess what? He fucking didn't. Again, proof that Stephen Galloway doesn't rape. Stephen said, "Why do you know so many human traffickers?" in response to someone writing a story on that subject. Well, I'm still chuckling. I know it's dry humor, but it was kind of funny. He's not on trial for telling bad jokes, or at least I hope not. Visualization techniques? Well, unless he said, "Close your eyes and picture my penis," then I'm falling short of feeling sorry for all you motherfuckers. Go build yourself a safe space on some Smurf planet. University is for grown-ups. Complainant 7. She states that the respondent was too familiar and too flirty, and that she consciously put distance between them. She says that she was very physical with him, punching him in the arm or pushing him. Once she put a snowball down the back of his shirt. I don't know how is this putting distance between them? Anyways, more than once, he says she told him that she thought he was a real shitty writer. On one occasion, the respondent says that complainant 7 was particularly brazen with him and slapped him in the face, although not hard. He says that in response, he told her jokingly that someday, once she graduated, he'd slap her back. Complainant 7 recalls that she and the respondent were razzing each other, right? So not putting a distance, that they were razzing each other, and that his threat to slap her following graduation did indeed become a running joke between them. She says he was not a particularly available thesis supervisor. The investigator notes that there is other evidence the respondent agreed to act as a thesis advisor to far more students than his other colleagues, and that he was indeed overcommitted. After complainant 7's graduation, the respondent approached her and slapped her. The respondent does not dispute the facts except to say the slap was not hard, was not malicious, and that he had no intention to injure. Complainant 7 says that rather than being angry, she actually accepted in her own mind that she deserved the slap. She notes, "In a bizarre way, I felt I deserved it because I'd been a pig-headed, however-year-old loudmouth. I now felt there was some closure with Stephen on the matter. We were done and we didn't need to talk about it anymore." She thought nothing more about the matter. Later in April of 2014, when they ran into each other on the street, the topic of the slap arose again, and she told him her mother's response had been that she deserved it. She asked if they could meet for a drink, and he said he had a busy schedule, but would like to try to arrange a meeting if it could be part of a larger group. The meeting never came about. All right, finally, an actual possible complaint of physical assault. Except she and her mother admit she pretty much deserved it. So let's call this one Miss I Know You Are, But What Am I? This particular woman was of the breed who thinks it's okay for her to go around hitting men, and they shouldn't hit her back. Stephen Galloway warned her that he would slap her when she graduated, and he didn't do so until she was no longer a student. She knew she deserved it, and not because of oppression. She deserved it because she was assaulting Stephen on a regular basis while he was incapable of defending himself. You know what? Feminists should tell women to stop slapping and assaulting men. Until they do that, they don't want a world without violence. Also, no one got raped here. We've only got one complainant left. It had better be a good one, right? Complainant 8. His chosen genre was poetry. He says that the respondent ridiculed his chosen genre of writing. The respondent stresses that this was a fiction class. He says the majority of the complainant's submissions were not works of fiction, but instead poems. The investigator concludes, "I accept his evidence that he never told the complainant that poetry is crap, or any words to that effect." The complainant's other complaint involves a Facebook page featuring a grumpy cat meme, over which he argued with the respondent. So here we go. Mr. Righteous Poetry Dude. His complaint: he took a fiction class and insisted on submitting poetry for his assignments instead of fiction. So his teacher, Stephen Galloway, got annoyed with him. He depicted Galloway as Grumpy Cat on Facebook, but who was the asshole here? Righteous Poetry Dude should... Fuck, do I even have to explain this one? No, you know what? I'm gonna write him a poem instead. There once was a poet so vain, he enrolled in a course just to feign. He refused to comply with the course syllabi, then gave his prof all the blame. I fully expect that Mr. Stephen Galloway would tell me that my poem is crap. I don't even know if limericks count as poetry, but that's all that Righteous Poetry Dude deserves. He's not a complainant, he's just a limerick, at best. Still think Stephen Galloway should have been fired? Still think you're silencing victims of sexual assault by demanding an investigation? We need to know how this happened. We need to know who is responsible for turning these flim-flam artists into complainants. We need to hold the people responsible for this accountable. But most of all, we need Stephen Galloway to know that we care about the truth. I do.